This is the Citrus Experience podcast, brought to you by Citrus Men. We're passionate about growing premium grafted citrus trees and helping you on your growing journey. Whether you're a seasoned gardener or an emerging green thumb, this series is for you. We share expert advice, insider knowledge and practical tips you can apply because we know and grow citrus.
Hello and welcome to the Citrus Men podcast. I'm Susan Burns.
And I'm Gary Isles.
And in this episode, we're going to look under the citrus leaf and discuss with admiration the magical and sometimes destructive pesties that like to chill out with our citrus trees. Hello, Gary.
Hello, Susan. I think
our lovely listeners will be very surprised to learn how many cute little insects are hanging around with their citrus trees, don't you think?
I'm sure. And what we want to get out of this is to tell people not to stress. It's all part of nature. We've got to work with insects. We've got to work with all sorts of things. So don't panic. Just relax. Yes. There's no major issues here. We're just, let you know when maybe to interact and when not to.
Yeah, I think people do tend to panic a bit when they can actually either see damage or they're seeing some pests, and maybe they're thinking, oh, if I don't get onto it now, it's going to get out of control. But as you're going to explain, nature has a way of keeping things in balance, and we don't really need to interfere too much.
Yes, don't jump in straight away. Let's just keep an eye on it and see what's happening, and work with nature like we always have to with plants.
Yeah, it's easy to get things out of balance. So let's sort of go through a bit of a tick list of things that we might find, and maybe people will be surprised by some of them. And I'm going to just say, if you see big holes or big chewing, you've probably got a big kind of critter on there. So I think, would you be surprised to say that there are snails like citrus trees, Gary?
Yes, well, they're not discriminatory snails. They'll eat a lot of things, but they do eat citrus, and you may not see them. They may be hidden. They're up there in the evening and in the night eating, and they might go and hide away somewhere through the day, so you may not be seeing them. But the telltale, if you do have a snail infestation, is that they'll eat the leaves, and they'll leave the veins, the netting. It's like a netting left after they've been chewing away. So if you're seeing a lot of that, you may have a snail infestation, and you look closely. They're not all that big, sort of garden snail sizes, as small. What we call it, we call them Italian. I don't know whether that's the real name. It's what we've christened them when we see them, and they're just a small snail, about smaller than the fingernail on your small finger. So, they quite easily can hide somewhere up into some leaves, and you might just find that by having a bit of a search and brushing them out, that you get rid of them. Yes. I don't like the snail baits particularly. They're not very dog and animal friendly.
Yeah.
That'd be a very last resort. I think I'd just try and, mechanically get rid of them if we're dealing with one or two trees in your backyard. I think we would do any chemical intervention as a very last resort.
Yeah, they are, I know from my own experience, they are really sneaky, those little snails. They're very good at hiding. But critters will eat them. Like blackbirds love them. I don't like blackbirds, but anyway, it's another story. But they will eat them. Blue-tongued lizards will eat them, but a blue-tongued lizard won't climb up in your tree. But I think there are some good, very iron-based pellets, which are kind of safe for your puppies. And you don't need to use a lot. Like, you can just put 1 or 2 pellets. I think people just put so much on. You only need a couple. And also you can use beer. Snails love beer, and they'll go down, have a little beer party at night time, and that's it. That's it. Good night, nurse.
Well, I didn't know that one, Susan. So there you are. But
there you are. I've taught you something, Gary Isles.
There you are. You have. But I mean, it's mainly about being observant.
Yes.
Having a look, and if you see sort of those leaves like we explained, have a look around and see. Don't go running off thinking, oh, what can I spray with this? And maybe a tiny infestation that the animals get rid of. So just watch it is what
Sure.
I would advise. Yes.
Yeah. So it's probably a surprising one, but snails can be problematic. So look, a common thing is leaf miner, the telltale signs of leaf miner.
We get lots of questions about leaf miner, and leaf miner is. It's not so much detrimental to the tree unless it's a huge infestation, but it's mainly just the look of the tree is unpleasant because it curls the leaves around. So what it is it's leaf miner is a little moth that flies around at night and lays its eggs under the first layer of the leaf, generally in the back of the leaf, and only on immature leaves, on fresh new leaves. Once the leaves mature, then they can't lay their eggs under the layer of the leaf. So it's only the new flush that needs to be protected, and there's a number of ways of doing that. But what it is the egg hatches under the layer, and it then burrows around as a larvae, and then ends up as a little pupa and kinks the leaf over. Now, when it's in that point, it's past any control measures. The only point of being able to control leaf miner is when it's burrowing around as a larva. And there's a number of controls that we can use for that situation. Now, what I would say is it's not a pest that's active in the wintertime, maybe in the tropics. But in the majority of Australia, let's say from maybe the Queensland border, if you put a line across and went down, then through the winter, then it's not active. In the northern parts, then because it stays warm, then it probably is more active at other times. But wintertime, it's not active, and it starts to be noticed as you get closer to Christmas. Not so much in the early spring. So it's that early December through until the weather cools off at the end of the autumn. That's its period of being active. Has a 14-day life cycle, so it will lay its eggs and hatch and complete its life cycle in about 14 days in peak times when the temperatures are all conducive for it.
And are you saying?
Well, certainly in production, we have to keep it under control because we've got a lot of plants and a lot of material for the insect to eat. I would say that maybe in a young tree that's developing, you might treat it, but I wouldn't use any what I call harsh, strong chemicals. I'd lean towards neem oils, pest oils, eco oils, those sorts of oils. Neem oil is something we use quite a bit in our production. It's a plant extract. It's as far as chemicals go, it's very, very friendly to users and to plants, and it just basically stops that larva from maturing. And the oils stop the female insect laying the eggs. Yeah, right. That's how the oils in general work. So you're interrupting the cycle. Yeah, and it's a fairly user-friendly product. So if we're going to have any treatment, I think that would be where I would go. Yes. Bearing in mind in all of this, once you start intervening and using particularly the harsher chemicals, which we rarely would recommend, it interrupts everything because there's good insects and bad insects that we'll explain as we go along as well. But not all insects are bad. There are insects that eat other insects, and we'll talk about that shortly.
Yeah, sure. And that's the point you're making there, Gary, is that look, if the tree is not suffering and it's coping and you've got a good, healthy tree and it's got a bit of size in it, the predators will come. The things that eat that or affect that. I mean, often with leaf miner, it's a little season of it, as you say, and then you can get rid of the damaged leaves and away you go. The tree flushes out and off it goes. But, you know, as you say, you'll have a cupboard full of chemicals and you'll be stressing out, and it's just not necessary. And Mother Nature has everything ready to roll out. Just get out of the way. So scale is another common insect, and again, it's the neem oil I know is fantastic for that. But there are a few different kinds of scale.
Yeah, there's a number of different scales that attack your plants in general, citrus in particular. So we don't see it so much nowadays, but I used to see a bit of what we called white wax scale, which is probably one of the easiest ones to see because there's a big blob of white waxy material on the branch, and that can really get out of hand. But if you just see one or two, then a brush or or just flick it off with your hand. It's not going to hurt. Before it starts to get hold, it would be the best way to attack it. You can use, like you said, some of the oils are good with scales, but generally the scale, the point to get them is when they're what we call the crawlers. So they'll lay their eggs, and they'll hatch into crawlers. And that's the point where you can get it. Once they're under the scale, they're much more difficult to control. So they have a little insect under that protective scale that we see. So under there, is the insect that hatches out, and the crawlers come out, and that's the stage where they are a bit vulnerable. And if we want to use some treatment, that's the point to get them, and that happens in the springtime. So they've overwintered underneath their little
roof
cover.
It's like a little cave.
Their little roof. Yes, that's right. So, and I spoke about white wax scale. So there are some others. There's some red scales, and there's some pink scales, and there's a number of them. And it's just a matter of having a look on the stem. Now, there is a telltale with scales. There's a couple of things that tell you when there's scale on your tree. There can be what we call a sooty mold that comes from the products that the scales put out, and you'll see maybe on your leaves some sooty mold. Now that is no problem to the plant. It just lets you know that there's some scale about. The other telltale is ants. Ants will be scurrying up and down the branches, and they'll be helping spread that scale because they're moving them around in their travels while they're trying to get that nice that moldy honeydew. That's the word I'm looking for. Yes, that excellent. So if you see ants running up and down the tree, then you might have some scales. Now, if that was, my tree in my backyard, I'd just go out there with a brush and just try and brush them off and interrupt their life cycle.
The ants or the scale?
The scale I'm talking about. Yes,
well, I just, because I think that's a beautiful relationship. We call it a symbiotic relationship where the ants go, hey, I'm really liking that honeydew you're making. Let me move you around to another nice location on the tree, and you can make me a bit more, and I'll look after you, me and my team. And they do that with lots. Ants do that with aphid as well, don't they?
Yeah, I think there's any of the insects that will put out that honeydew, then that's the ants love it.
Yeah. So it's an amazing system they've got, really amazing. So, and also the ants will come too if your soil is a bit dry. So I think it's good, particularly because this is all happening as the weather's getting warmer, to make sure you haven't got too dry soil. Or is that not right?
No, I think that's probably I think they really will come if that honeydews there, they'll hunt it out. Now, nature's amazing how they find these things.
Oh yeah, it's quite fantastic. So that scale, and it's probably important for people to realise that little scale or the roof that Gary was talking about, that will remain even if you've killed the scale off or the scale has died off. It's sort of like now an unoccupied house, but you can tell by if you put your fingernail in, if it's dry, it's gone. If it's squishy, well, hopefully you're not eating your breakfast when we're telling you this, but then it's still alive. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. You can tell it'll brush off easier if the insects moved on. So yeah, it is. But yeah, you can if you press it and it's squishy and you'll know that it's still got a live insect under it.
Yes. So we'll quickly jump over to something that's happening where the weather's warming and the tree is starting to push the growth up and down the phloem and xylem. Aphids. Yep. And wow, how amazing is aphids, they lay eggs and live young. That's why you just get an amazing infestation. So, did you know that a mother aphid can lay 1,000 live little aphids in a day? How's that for production?
Yeah, it's amazing. Yes. So, aphids, spring and autumn, when you see them, middle of summer, they don't like those really hot days, so you don't see them much then. But spring and autumn, they can be about. Again, they're a pest of the new growth, of the new flush. Yeah. That's where they need to be. So you'll see them if they're there on your new shoots as they come out in the warmer months. So yeah, it's aphids. The oils will suppress them. If you've just got a few, if you've got the hose in your hand, a good sharp squirt of water will yes. dislodge some of them. Yeah. So again, don't go running off putting heavy chemicals on your plant. You can a bit of mechanical interruption and maybe some oil sprays will keep them under control.
And look,
a little note.
Yeah.
A little note on aphids is that and some other insects will spread some of the plant diseases. So some of the plant viruses. Now, there's nothing to do with human viruses. I need to underline that. There's no issue for humans, but plant viruses can be spread by aphids in particular, because they suck into the plant and the virus, if it's in the aphid, can go into the plant. So yeah, it's interesting how all these things.
Yeah, they're like a hypodermic needle, aren't they? They've got their proboscis in there, and then off they go and give that. It's important.
Yeah. So just a little side note that is an issue with some insects.
Yeah, for sure. But look, I think really just they can be squished off very easily, but it's kind of cool, especially if you've got children or grandchildren. Have a look at them. I mean, they'll just get a magnifying glass and admire them, because they are a piece of work. You can see them pumping all that. And the little ones and the other ones, extraordinary.
Yep. So they're all working hard.
They're all working hard to do their thing. There is a lot of things that will eat aphids, so that the ladybirds will do that, won't they?
Yeah.
Do we call them birds, beetles, bugs?
Oh, I call them beetles, lady beetles, but yeah, they're a handy little insect. Not all lady beetles are beneficials, but then they're rarely a problem. So if you see lady beetles or ladybugs, however you want to, leave them alone. Generally, some of their species are predatory and they'll eat other insects. So yep, they're
a good thing.
they're handy. Let's leave them do their work. That's why we're saying don't run to intervention with heavy chemicals, because there's a real balance in all of this where unless the infestation gets really heavy, then then the other insects will be eating, and like you say, some birds will be feeding off them. So there's there's things happening in naturally that if you start running with some of the heavy chemicals, this is what all of agriculture has learned over the years, that if you intervene with heavy chemicals, then you upset the natural balance, and then you've got another issue. Yeah. So keep your interventions with those things as minimal as possible, and we've learnt that in production as well.
Yes, yeah, it's so important. I love to watch the little wrens here, and they will hop on my citrus trees and they will clean up. They're cleaning up all the aphid. You can just see them nibbling things away. And, when you think about a bird, a little bird, that has to eat 4 or 5 times its body weight in insects a day. So leave the insect. They'll do the work for you, let them do it. They're perfect little gardeners, they are. Let's talk about another little stinky bug, Gary, the stink bug, the bronze orange bug.
Yeah, they're a horrible insect.
They are horrible. Okay, we don't like them.
We don't like them. They nibble around and at the little stalk that goes onto that holds your fruit, and you'll lose fruit. Your fruit will be marked. Yeah, and they can get fairly heavily big infestation of those in certain circumstances. So, at some years I get lots of questions about stink bugs, and others not. So it seems as though that it's related to the weather of that time of the year and all that, so that it varies. But there's and they will squirt at you. So
they're arrogant, aren't they? They look at you as if to say, "This is my tree, get out."
Yeah. So maybe a pair of glasses or sunglasses or something, just so they don't squirt into your eyes. And I've told people over the years, you just get a broom or brush or something, brush them onto the ground and stamp on them. That's sort of the non-chemical, the mechanical intervention. Yes, then again, oils suppress all sorts of insects, and that would be where I'd go. I'd try and knock them off the tree and stamp on them. And while you're out, doing your gardening, and hopefully that's enough to keep them down. But they're a horrible insect. They mark the fruit, and I don't see any upside with them at all.
No, I can't think. They're kind of, maybe they're kind of attractive. Maybe they look pretty. But I'll tell you what is pretty. Caterpillars. Now, they are one of those big holes, big pests kind of things, but they're not with us for very long, and they turn into the most beautiful, beautiful butterflies. So I am just not going to say get rid of caterpillars.
Again, they don't cause a lot of problems. And you can use the old squash technique, thumb and forefinger. That's if you want to get rid of them. But I don't see a lot of issues with caterpillars around. You'll see some, but they don't seem to get heavy infestations in my experience anyway.
No, because I think that people use too many chemicals. We just don't see enough of them. Sadly.
I think that's what we're saying. We're saying, like we've learned, over the years that we try and keep your chemical usage as minimal as possible. Mm-hmm. So do a little bit of mechanical intervention. Go out there and spend a couple of minutes, and you might find that you don't need that stuff. And if you do, go for the oils, which are much lighter impact on everybody.
Yeah. And again, I think with the caterpillars, it's something to admire and to be in awe of. And again, I remember last year I had a chrysalis that formed on my lemon pinky, and for all the world, you would have thought it was the bark of the lemon pinky. It was variegated. It had made the shape, so it was so well camouflaged. It was an extraordinary piece of architecture, just so worthy of admiration. So, yeah,
Amazing. It's all about survival and
incredible. So
the next generation.
In production, which is always very different from being in the home gardener, you also you're not rejecting, but moving away from chemicals. What sort of things are you doing in production to lessen your use of chemicals and to keep the trees beautiful and healthy and clean, using predatory insects?
Yes, yeah, we've been using predatory insects for the last few years for some of our pests. It's like you say, Susan, it's trying to move away from chemical usage as much as possible, and still being able to present a clean, nice plant to the marketplace. So one of the big ones for us is two-spotted mite. Now, two-spotted mite's rarely an issue for the home gardener, but when we've got a greenhouse full of plants, two-spotted mite can very easily go crazy. So we use a predator. There are a number of them, but there's businesses that produce these predators, which is fantastic for us. So if we get once we get a certain level of population of that insect, then we call them up and say, send us some packets of your insects, and the insects arrive and we spread them through the greenhouse and they chomp away, and it's amazing. They do a great job. So it's reduced our spraying intervention hugely for two-spotted mite, and it's a very difficult insect to kill by spray. So doing it this way works really, really well. It's all about looking and monitoring, and then calling up the people with the insects when you need them. So that's a great one for us. And there's another one we use is and another insect that home gardeners probably don't deal with much is fungus gnats. So we have when we're doing our germination and we're keeping a lot of moisture around the seed and the little seedling, and that the fungus gnats really like that situation. So and again, we've been able to use predatory insects that will chew on the fungus gnats. So fungus gnats are a real pain because they lay a larva in the potting mix and eat the roots. So it's that's another good one. And the other one that I was going to mention was there is some predators for red scale, which can be a problem in the orchard situation and the outside. And so that's very common for releasing the predators for red scale in citrus. So this is a growing world of people researching insects and what insects eat other insects, and it's a specialist area which is a benefit for us that produce plants.
Sure, and the knock-on effect will be that there's less chemicals in use, and the right balance of insects are coming, and it's a happy world we're looking forward to, for sure.
Yeah,
Gary,
it's very good.
I think that we could, like always, we could just talk about citrus and all the delightful things about citrus, but we better wrap up and say thanks very much. Thank you to everyone for joining us, and
thanks for listening.
Yeah, it's an intriguing world, and the citrus world, but also the balance of pests on your plants. So don't, as Gary says, don't panic. Everything will be fine. So thank you, Gary. And in our next episode, we're going to give you like a virtual garden centre experience. We're going to assist you in choosing the best citrus tree, the best variety for your family or your needs. So we're going to give you a bit of a guide to that. So that'll be fun. So we'll look forward to seeing you then. And thank you, Gary. Thanks for another super interesting episode.
Thank you, Susan.
And we'll see you next episode when we talk about citrus.
Thanks for listening. For resources and contact details relevant to this episode, please see the show notes. Subscribe to Citrus Experience so you know when the next episode goes live. And follow Citrus Men on social media for more great content.